we've got 2 more lectures for this unit, and both of these are review from last year's biology, when you guys learned about the biomolecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So this little lecture is going to go over the carbohydrates and the lipids, and then the next one we'll see about the proteins and the nucleic acids. Alright, so our first question is, what are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are basically just organic molecules that living organisms like us and animals and stuff use for energy. Okay, so these are some examples of carbohydrates that we eat. Breads, pastas, rice, grains, potatoes, starches, all that stuff are what we call carbohydrates. They can range in size from a single monomer, okay, which is a single little picture like this. Okay, this is 1 sugar unit. It's called a monomer. So we can have carbohydrates that are 1 sugar unit, or we can have carbohydrates that are all linked together like this. This is called a polymer, when we have all these little single ones hooked up together. So they can range in size from very small to very big. All right, our next question is, what are monosaccharides? Okay, monosaccharides are a type of carbohydrate. They're the simplest carbohydrate. In fact, we call them simple sugars. Okay, so they're the smallest sugar molecule that we can have. It's called a monosaccharide. Okay, so here are 3 examples that you'll need to recognize as monosaccharides: glucose, galactose, and fructose. And we can see here on the right-hand side that this is the structure of glucose and this is the structure of fructose. They have pretty much similar building blocks. They're all made out of carbons, oxygens, and hydrogens. We have a bunch of alcohol groups here with the OHs in both of them, and we also have this double bond, carbon double bond oxygen, like a ketone. And you can see that they're at very different places within this carbon change, so it makes it a different sugar. So these are just 2 of the many different kinds of carbohydrates or monosaccharides that exist. Alright, so if monosaccharides are the simplest kind of carbohydrate, we're going to do 1 step further and talk about disaccharides. Okay, disaccharides, remember the prefix di means 2. So disaccharides are formed when 2 monosaccharides bond together. So I'm going to give you 2 examples that you need to recognize as disaccharides. The first one is sucrose, which is basically a sugar formed between glucose and fructose. Okay, so that's this one here. This one is sucrose, which basically we have a glucose and a fructose hooked together to make what's called a disaccharide. It's a bigger sugar molecule than just glucose and fructose separate. And the other example that I'm going to give you is lactose. That's the milk sugar, basically. If people are lactose intolerant, that means that they don't have the enzyme to break down this sugar. So lactose is formed by glucose and galactose coming together, that's this one, to form a bigger sugar molecule. So those are 2 types of disaccharides. Now, our bodies can only absorb monosaccharides. Okay, and so disaccharides or anything bigger than disaccharides have to be digested by enzymes, okay, in order to get into our bloodstream. So in order to digest sucrose, we need the enzyme sucrase, okay, to digest it, basically to break this bond, so that our bodies can absorb it. Or, okay, for lactose, we need the enzyme lactase in order to, again, break this bond right here so that our bodies can absorb the glucose and galactose separately. All right, the last question that has to deal with carbohydrates is, what are polysaccharides? So these are the biggest kinds of sugars that exist, and poly means many. In fact, in polysaccharides, we need at least 12 or more single monomer sugars, meaning single monosaccharides all hooked together. So we need 12 of them all hooked together to be called a polysaccharide. And so some examples here are glycogen, cellulose, and starch. Okay, cellulose and starch, these 2, okay, are plant-based polysaccharides. Okay, starch is the one that we can digest. cellulose we cannot digest in our digestive systems. So starches like potatoes and that kind of stuff. And glycogen is how it's in animals, okay, and it's how we store energy in our liver for later use, okay. So the glycogen is a polysaccharide usually found in animal bodies that stores lots of energy for later use. So those are examples of polysaccharides. Okay, so our last two questions have to do with lipids. What are lipids or fats? So lipids are large non-polar biological molecules. So that means they're found in the body of plants and animals. And their two main functions are to store energy and to make cell membranes. And you should remember that from biology last year. So this is a picture of the cell membrane. We've got phospholipids there that make up the membrane and allow proteins to be there to transport things in, and signal carriers and all that stuff. So those are the two main purposes of lipids. All right, so there's basically 5 types of lipids that we can find in our bodies. We've got fatty acids. Okay, fatty acids look like this. You're not going to be able. You don't need to know like the structures. I'm just showing you some pictures here. Triglycerides. You may have heard of that one, especially if you've had your blood drawn and your lab work done. They do count your triglycerides in your blood, just to make sure you don't have high cholesterol. Phospholipids, okay, something like this, where it actually has a phosphate group in there, and there's a little P there, phosphate group attached to these fatty acids. Then we have waxes, like your earwax, okay, for protection. And the last one is steroids, and most of them are based off of a cholesterol format, and steroids are super important. There's steroid hormones, there's steroid transport proteins, so they're very important for your body. Not just steroids that you hear of when you hear of like bodybuilders and stuff. So those are lipids. We're just going to make it short and sweet here, just to review what they do and what kinds there are. And so that's it for these notes. So we are going to see you tomorrow for just a little review of carbohydrates and lipids. And last but not least, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to do this, the extra credit thing. If you come in tomorrow, grab a little sticky note or a little piece of paper and write your name and the words. Let's do just word fat, okay? F-A-T. Let's keep it simple. All right, so your name and the word fat on a little sticky note, and I'll give you a couple points extra credit. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.